The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Starfleet has charted thousands of star systems, catalogued millions of lifeforms, and every discovery, no matter how strange, eventually yields to scientific explanation. But what happens when sensors detect something that defies every theory, every calculation, every rational law that holds reality together? What happens when a being appears who shouldn't exist, yet does? Captain James T. Kirk stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise, staring at the view screen with the expression of a man who'd just been told the universe had rewritten its own rulebook. Behind him, the turbolift doors hissed shut as Dr. Leonard McCoy stepped onto the bridge, medical tricorder in hand. "Jim, you better have a damn good reason for pulling me away from..." McCoy stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he caught sight of the image on screen. "What in God's name is that?" "That, Bones," Kirk said slowly, "is what we're trying to figure out." The view screen displayed a humanoid figure suspended in the vacuum of space approximately 300 meters off the Enterprise's starboard bow. No environmental suit. No ship debris nearby. No distress beacon. Just a man, or something that looked remarkably like a man, floating serenely in hard vacuum as if taking an afternoon stroll through a park. "Mr. Spock." Kirk turned to his science officer, who was hunched over his station with the intensity of a Vulcan who just discovered an equation that didn't balance. "Fascinating, Captain." Spock's fingers danced across his controls, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his scanner displays. The entity registers life signs consistent with a humanoid carbon-based life form. However, several readings are highly irregular. Irregular how? Kirk moved to stand beside Spock's station. For one, the entity is surviving in hard vacuum without any form of environmental protection. His core body temperature reads at approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, normal for human physiology. His cellular structure appears to be absorbing and converting stellar radiation at an efficiency rate that exceeds our instrument's ability to measure. Spock looked up, one eyebrow raised. "Captain, according to these readings, he should have been dead approximately 7.3 minutes before we detected him." "And yet there he is," Kirk murmured, studying the figure on screen. The man wore a strange uniform, predominantly blue with a vibrant red cape and an unfamiliar symbol emblazoned on his chest. His posture was relaxed, almost peaceful, but his eyes, even from this distance, Kirk could see them tracking the Enterprise's position with focused awareness. "Captain," Lieutenant Uhura called from her communications station, "I'm receiving no distress signals, no identification transponder, no communication attempts of any kind. It's as if he's not even trying to signal us." "Maybe he doesn't need to," McCoy muttered. "Jim, that man is floating in space like it's a Sunday swim. Either we're looking at the universe's luckiest survivor, or something we've never encountered before." Kirk's hand instinctively moved to rest on the back of his command chair, a gesture of command, of decision-making weight. In his years exploring the galaxy, he'd encountered energy beings, androids, genetic augments, and creatures that challenged humanity's understanding of life itself. But something about this felt different. This felt deliberately impossible. "Mr. Sulu, bring us to within 50 meters. Yellow alert." Kirk's voice carried the calm authority of a man who'd stared down Klingon warbuds and Romulan commanders. "Mr. Spock, full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about our guest, biological composition, energy signature, potential threats." "Aye, Captain." Sulu's hands moved smoothly across the helm controls. And the Enterprise gracefully adjusted its trajectory. As the starship approached, the figure's head turned fully toward them. Even through the view screen, Kirk felt the weight of that gaze, intelligent, assessing, cautious but not afraid. The man's cape rippled silently in the solar wind, a splash of crimson against the star-field backdrop. "Spock, is he moving under his own power?" "Affirmative, Captain. The entity appears to be generating a form of propulsion, though I detect no exhaust signature, no thrust mechanism, no conventional means of locomotion. He is simply moving." As if gravity and inertia do not apply to him. Bones, could he be some kind of evolved human? A genetic mutation? McCoy studied his medical tricorder, shaking his head slowly. Jim, his basic structure reads as human, 2 lungs, 1 heart, standard skeletal framework. But the cellular density is off the charts. His bone structure appears to be absorbing and redistributing energy in ways that shouldn't be physiologically possible. If this is a mutation, it's one that rewrote the entire biological playbook. Kirk tapped the communications panel on his armrest. Lieutenant Uhura, open a hailing frequency. All standard Federation first contact protocols. Hailing frequencies open, sir. Kirk straightened in his chair, his voice taking on the formal tone of diplomatic first contact. This is Captain James T. Kirk of the United Federation of Planets Starship Enterprise. We've detected you in distress and are prepared to render assistance. Please identify yourself and state your origin. For a long moment, silence filled the bridge. Then, impossibly, a voice responded, not through the communications system, but seemingly from everywhere at once, as if the man were speaking directly into the bridge itself. My name is Kal-El. Though most know me as Clark Kent. A pause, and when the voice continued, there was a trace of confusion beneath the calm. I don't know how I got here. One moment I was in the Fortress of Solitude, investigating a Kryptonian crystal resonance pattern, and the next. I was here. Wherever here is. Kirk exchanged glances with Spock. Mr. Spock. Captain, I am detecting no communication beam, no subspace carrier wave. He appears to be speaking directly through the hull plating using controlled vibration of his vocal cords. The precision required would be impossible, McCoy finished. Jim, this is getting beyond bizarre. Kirk stood, tugging his uniform tunic down in the gesture his crew had come to recognize as his decision point. Kal-El, I'm activating our transporter system to bring you aboard. You'll materialize in our transporter room where we can speak more comfortably. Transporter. The voice carried genuine curiosity. I'm not familiar with the technology, but I appreciate the offer, Captain Kirk. However, I think it might be safer if I simply come to you. Before anyone could respond, the figure on the view screen moved. Not flew, moved. One moment he was 300 meters away, the next he was hovering directly outside the bridge view screen, his face mere inches from the transparent aluminum, his eyes, a striking blue, studying the crew with an intensity that made even Kirk take an involuntary step back. Fascinating, Spock breathed. Sweet mother of, McCoy's medical tricorder slipped from his hand, clattering on the deck. The man called Kal-El smiled, a surprisingly gentle expression, and pointed toward the hull, then made a questioning gesture. The meaning was clear, may I come in? Kirk found his voice, though it took more effort than he'd admit. Mr. Scott, is there any safe way to bring him aboard without explosive decompression? From the engine room, Scotty's voice crackled over the intercom, thick with disbelief. Captain, I'm reading a humanoid life sign outside the bridge viewport. Are you telling me there's a man floating in space asking permission to drop by for tea? Something like that, Scotty. Well, I can open the auxiliary maintenance hatch on deck too, but sir, if he can survive in vacuum and move like that, I'm not sure our standard precautions mean much. Kirk made his decision. Open the hatch, Mr. Scott. Kal-El, proceed to deck 2, section 7. We'll meet you there. He turned to his first officer. Spock, you're with me. Bones, bring your medical kit. Sulu, you have the con. As Kirk strode toward the turbolift, Uhura's voice stopped him. Captain. What should I tell Starfleet Command? Kirk paused, considering the question. How did you report that the Enterprise had just made first contact with a being who could survive in vacuum, fly without propulsion, and communicate through solid starship hulls? Tell them, Kirk said finally, we've encountered something new. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The turbolift doors closed, carrying Kirk, Spock, and McCoy toward a meeting that would challenge everything Starfleet understood about the limits of biology, physics, and what it meant to be human in an infinite universe. In the cold silence of space, the man called Kal-El, Superman, took one last look at the star field that was decidedly not his own, and wondered if he'd ever find his way home. The auxiliary maintenance hatch on Deck 2 cycled open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a decompression chamber barely large enough for 3 people. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy stood behind a transparent aluminum barrier as atmosphere equalized and safety protocols ran their automated checks. Beyond the inner airlock door, sensors confirmed a humanoid presence waiting patiently on the other side. Atmospheric pressure normalized, the computer's feminine voice announced. Decompression sequence complete. Interior hatch may be opened. Kirk nodded to the security officer standing by the manual override. Open it. The door slid aside, and Superman stepped through. Up close, the effect was even more striking. He stood well over 6 feet tall, his physique suggesting a strength that McCoy's tricorder readings had already confirmed was far beyond human norms. The blue and red uniform appeared to be a single seamless garment, no visible seams or fasteners, made from a material that seemed to shimmer slightly under the corridor's lighting. The symbol on his chest, a stylized S within a diamond shield, caught the light like a beacon. But it was his face that held Kirk's attention. Despite the alien circumstances, despite the impossible readings, the man's expression was open, almost gentle. His blue eyes carried an intelligence and wariness that Kirk recognized, the look of someone trying to make sense of a situation spiraling beyond their control. Captain Kirk. Superman extended his hand in a gesture so human, so familiar, that it momentarily disarmed the tension in the corridor. Thank you for allowing me aboard. Kirk took the offered hand. The grip was firm but carefully controlled, as if Superman were consciously moderating his strength. Welcome to the Enterprise. This is my first officer, Commander Spock, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Leonard McCoy. Spock raised his hand in the Vulcan salute. Live long and prosper, Kal-El. Your presence raises numerous questions of both scientific and philosophical significance. Superman returned the gesture with a slight smile. I wish I had answers for you, Commander. I'm as confused as you are. Confused or not, McCoy interjected, medical scanner already active and sweeping over their guest, you're the most biologically impossible thing I've scanned in 30 years of medicine. Your cellular structure is denser than duranium, your cardiovascular system operates at efficiency levels that shouldn't sustain consciousness, and according to this thing, he tapped his tricorder, you're generating more energy than you're consuming. That's not evolution. That's not mutation. That's rewriting the laws of thermodynamics. Dr. McCoy is rather direct, Kirk said with a diplomatic smile. But he's not wrong. Kal-El, or do you prefer Clark? We need to understand what you are and how you came to be floating outside our ship. Superman's expression grew serious. Clark is fine. And Captain, I understand your concern. If I encountered someone with my abilities in unfamiliar circumstances, I'd have questions too. He glanced around the corridor, taking in the design aesthetic, the unfamiliar technology, the style of uniforms. But first, I need to ask you something. What year is this? And what planet are we near? Kirk exchanged glances with Spock. Stardate 3287.5. By Earth's calendar, that's 2267. We're currently in Federation space, approximately 7 light-years from the Ceti Alpha system. The color drained from Superman's face. 2267. That's not possible. When I left Earth, it was 2024. His hand instinctively moved to his chest, fingers tracing the symbol there as if seeking reassurance. And 7 light-years from Ceti Alpha? I don't recognize that system. Fascinating. Spock's tricorder hummed as he continued his scans. You claim temporal displacement of 243 years. However, your cellular degradation patterns suggest you are chronologically no more than 30 to 35 years of biological age. If you traveled forward in time, you did so without experiencing its passage. Or, McCoy added darkly, you're from somewhere that isn't when, but where. Parallel universe, maybe. Alternate timeline. Superman's jaw tightened. The fortress. I was studying a crystal formation that Jor-El's records warned might create dimensional instabilities. There was a resonance frequency building. I tried to contain it, but... He looked at Kirk with sudden intensity. Captain, have you detected any unusual energy signatures in this region? Subspace distortions, spatial anomalies. Mr. Spock. Spock's fingers moved across his tricorder. We detected a brief subspace rupture approximately 3.7 hours ago. At the time, we attributed it to natural stellar phenomena, a compression wave from a distant supernova. However, if your arrival coincides with that temporal marker, then I rode that wave like a tunnel between realities, Superman finished. Which means I might be able to ride it back, if we can locate the entry point. Kirk's command instincts kicked in. This wasn't just a first contact situation anymore, this was a potential temporal or dimensional incident with implications far beyond one displaced individual. Mr. Spock, I want a full analysis of that subspace rupture. Compare it against every recorded instance of dimensional breach in Federation databases. Bones, continue your medical assessment. Clark, Kirk met the other man's eyes, I'm taking you to the briefing room. We need to have a longer conversation about who you are and what you can do. Understood. Superman's voice carried both gratitude and resignation. Captain, I know this situation is unprecedented. I'll cooperate fully with your investigation. As they walked through the Enterprise's corridors, crew members stopped and stared. Word had already spread, the ship's grapevine was faster than any communication system, and the sight of the caped stranger walking alongside the captain drew curious glances and whispered conversations. The briefing room doors slid open, revealing the familiar oval table and view screen. Kirk gestured to a chair, and Superman sat with the careful control of someone aware their slightest movement could cause damage. Spock took his customary position, while McCoy remained standing, still scanning. All right, Clark, Kirk said, settling into his chair with the casual authority that had defined his command style. Let's start from the beginning. You said your name is Kal-El. That doesn't sound like any Earth name I recognize. It's not. It's Kryptonian. Superman's voice carried a weight of old grief. I was born on a planet called Krypton. My father, Jor-El, was one of their leading scientists. He discovered that Krypton was becoming unstable, the planet's core was collapsing. He tried to warn the ruling council, but they dismissed his findings as fear-mongering. Spock's eyebrow raised. A planetary extinction event they chose to ignore. Illogical. Politics rarely is logical, Commander. When Jor-El realized they wouldn't evacuate, he built a small spacecraft, barely large enough for an infant. He and my mother, Lara, made a choice. They sent me to Earth, hoping I'd find safety among a primitive but promising civilization. Primitive, McCoy repeated. You're talking about Earth? In the year I came from, Earth had barely ventured beyond its own moon. Nuclear weapons, fossil fuels, global conflicts, Superman shook his head. But also incredible potential. Kindness, creativity, hope. My parents saw that potential. They believed humanity would raise me to use my gifts wisely. Kirk leaned forward. And these gifts? We've seen some of them. The vacuum survival, the flight, the impossible strength. What else can you do, Clark? Superman hesitated. Clearly weighing how much to reveal. Then, with a decision that spoke to trust being tentatively offered, he answered. I can fly at speeds approaching what you might call relativistic velocities. I have enhanced vision. I can see across vast distances, through most solid materials, across different electromagnetic spectra. My hearing extends beyond normal human range. I can generate concentrated heat through focused solar energy, what I call heat vision. I'm functionally invulnerable to most physical damage. And I can freeze objects with my breath by compressing and rapidly expelling air. The silence that followed was profound. Functionally invulnerable, McCoy finally said, his southern drawl thick with disbelief. Son, you're describing a walking weapons platform that makes our photon torpedoes look like firecrackers. I'm describing someone who tries to help people, Doctor. Superman's voice carried quiet conviction. On my Earth, I used these abilities to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. I stopped disasters, prevented wars, saved lives. Not because I had to, but because I could. Because it was right. Kirk studied the man across from him, recognizing something familiar in that earnest declaration. It was the same impulse that drove Starfleet officers into the unknown, the belief that power carried responsibility, that capability demanded action. But there was a crucial difference. Clark, in the Federation, we have a principle called the Prime Directive. It's our most sacred law. It states that we cannot interfere with the natural development of pre-warp civilizations, no matter what we witness, no matter how much we might want to help. Superman's eyes narrowed slightly. You let people suffer when you have the power to stop it? That doesn't sound like the Starfleet you've described. It's not about callousness, Kirk said carefully. It's about recognizing that every civilization must find its own path. History has taught us that imposed solutions, no matter how well-intentioned, often cause more harm than good. We explore, we learn, we establish relationships with equals. But we don't play God. I don't play God, Captain. Superman's voice hardened slightly. I'm just a man trying to do good with the abilities I was given. A man who can survive in hard vacuum and move faster than our sensors can track, Spock observed. In many cultures, such capabilities would qualify as divine. Before Superman could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Bridge to Captain Kirk. Kirk tapped the panel. Kirk here. Lieutenant Uhura's voice carried an edge of tension. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from a Klingon battle cruiser. They're demanding to know why we've taken aboard a potential weapon of mass destruction. Kirk's expression darkened. How do they know about our guest? Unknown, sir. But Commander Kor is on the line, and he sounds eager. Superman stood, his cape settling around his shoulders. Captain, I don't know who these Klingon are, but if my presence is causing political problems for you. Sit down, Clark. Kirk's voice was firm but not unkind. The Klingon cause political problems by existing. This just happens to be today's excuse. He returned to the intercom. Tell Commander Kor I'll speak with him shortly. And Uhura? Go to Yellow Alert. If Kor knows about our guest, we need to know how and who else might be listening. Aye, Captain. As the alert klaxons began their measured pulse, Kirk looked at Superman with the expression of a man recalculating rapidly shifting odds. First contact had just become significantly more complicated. Welcome to the 23rd century, Clark, Kirk said quietly. Where even the impossible becomes political. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the angular, predatory silhouette of a Klingon D-7 class battle cruiser. Even at this distance, its weapons arrays gleamed with barely restrained aggression, a warship designed with a single purpose, domination through superior firepower. And filling the screen was Commander Kor. The Klingon commander's dark eyes burned with an intensity that matched his reputation. His face bore the ridged forehead characteristic of his species, and his smile was the kind that predators wore when they'd cornered interesting prey. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel hummed with activity, weapons officers and tactical crew visible in the crimson-lit background. Captain Kirk. Kor's voice carried a mixture of respect and anticipation. How fortuitous that we meet again. And how interesting that your sensors detected what our long-range surveillance could not ignore, a being who survives the void of space as if it were his native environment. Kirk stood before the viewscreen, hands clasped behind his back in a posture of diplomatic neutrality. Superman stood to his left, Spock to his right, with McCoy hovering near the medical station. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, but Kirk could feel the tension radiating from every station. Commander Kor. Always a pleasure. Kirk's tone suggested it was anything but. I'm curious how Klingon sensors happen to be monitoring this sector of Federation space. Kor's laugh was sharp and humorless. We monitor many things, Kirk. The Empire has learned that the Federation's peaceful explorations often uncover weapons they claim to use only for defense. His eyes fixed on Superman with predatory focus. And now you have found the ultimate weapon, have you not? A being who requires no ship, no armor, who moves through space as we move through air. I'm not a weapon, Superman said quietly, his voice carrying clearly across the bridge. And I'm not interested in your Empire's conflicts. Kor's expression shifted to genuine intrigue. It speaks. And with such confidence. Tell me, creature, what are you called? My name is Kal-El. And I'm not a creature, I'm a person. A person. Kor savored the word. A person who can survive conditions that would kill a Klingon warrior in seconds. A person whose power readings our sensors detect from 3 sectors away. He leaned forward, his smile widening. You are either the greatest warrior the galaxy has ever seen, or you are a coward hiding behind impossible gifts. Which is it, Kal-El? Superman's jaw tightened, but Kirk stepped forward before he could respond. Commander Kor, this conversation is over. The individual aboard my ship is under Federation protection. If you have diplomatic concerns, you're welcome to file them through proper channels. Proper channels, Kor repeated mockingly. How very Starfleet of you, Kirk. But consider this, if the Federation possesses a being of such power, the balance of galactic politics shifts dramatically. The Empire cannot allow such an advantage to go unchallenged. Spock moved to his science station, fingers dancing across controls. Captain, the Klingon vessel is charging weapons. I'm not allowing anyone to possess me, Superman interjected, his voice hardening. Captain Kirk has been hospitable, but I don't belong to the Federation. And I certainly won't be claimed by an empire that threatens violence as its opening negotiation. Kor's eyes gleamed. Spirit. I appreciate that, Kal-El. Perhaps you are a warrior after all. I propose a test, come aboard my vessel. Allow our scientists to study you. If you are as powerful as our readings suggest, you have nothing to fear from Klingon hospitality. And if you possess true warrior's honor, you will not hide behind Starfleet's skirts. That's not going to happen, Kirk said flatly. Then you confirm he is a Federation asset. Kor's smile vanished. Replaced by cold calculation. This creates complications, Kirk. The High Council will interpret your protection as an act of military acquisition. Do you truly wish to start an interstellar incident over one being? Superman placed a hand on Kirk's shoulder, gently, but the gesture was clear. Captain, may I speak freely? Kirk glanced at him, reading the determination in those blue eyes. Against his better judgment, he nodded. Superman stepped forward, addressing Kor directly. Commander, I don't know the full history between your empire and the Federation. But I understand warriors, I've faced them before. If you're truly interested in measuring my capabilities, then I propose a different test. One that doesn't involve Federation politics or your empire's ambitions. Kor's interest was palpable. I'm listening. Single combat. You and me. No weapons, no ships, no backup. Just warrior to warrior. If I win, you leave this sector and stop threatening Captain Kirk's ship. If you win. Superman paused, considering. Then we'll discuss what happens next. The bridge fell silent. Kirk's hand moved toward Superman's arm, but McCoy beat him to it. "Are you insane?" McCoy hissed. "You don't know what you're agreeing to. Klingon don't fight for sport, they fight to kill." "I can handle myself, Doctor." "Captain," Spock said quietly, "this proposal violates numerous Federation protocols regarding first contact situations and non-interference in." "I'm aware, Mr. Spock." Kirk's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds and outcomes. Kor wouldn't accept a simple refusal. The Klingon commander had maneuvered them into a position where backing down would be interpreted as weakness, potentially emboldening further Klingon aggression in this sector. But allowing Superman to fight could establish a dangerous precedent. On the view screen, Kor's expression had shifted to something resembling genuine respect. "You offer personal combat? How refreshingly direct, Kal-El. I accept your challenge." He paused, his tactical mind clearly at work. "However, I propose a modification. Not me, I am a commander, not a mere warrior. Instead, you will face my weapons officer, Lieutenant Kirk. He has killed 17 opponents in ritual combat. If you survive him, then we will speak of larger matters." "No," Kirk said sharply. "This is Federation space. If there's going to be a contest, it happens on neutral ground with neutral observers. And I want assurances that regardless of outcome, your vessel withdraws peacefully." Kor considered this, his fingers drumming on his command chair's armrest. "Very well, Kirk. There is an asteroid field 0.7 parsecs from our current position. We will meet there in 2 hours. Neutral ground, as you say. And if your warrior defeats Kirk." Kor's smile returned, "Then perhaps I will tell you how we knew to be in this sector at precisely the right moment to witness his arrival." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the view screen filled with stars and the ominous silhouette of the Klingon cruiser adjusting its trajectory. Kirk whirled on Superman. "What the hell were you thinking? You just agreed to fight a Klingon warrior without knowing anything about their capabilities, their culture, or what happens if you lose. Captain, with respect, you were running out of diplomatic options." Kor was looking for an excuse to escalate. "I gave him an alternative that satisfies his warrior culture without starting a war." Superman met Kirk's angry gaze calmly. "On my Earth, I've learned that sometimes the best way to prevent violence is to be willing to engage in it, on your own terms. This isn't your Earth." McCoy snapped. "You're in over your head, son. Klingon don't spar, they dismember. They don't surrender, they die fighting. You might be invulnerable back home, but here. We don't know what their weapons can do to you." "Bones is right," Kirk said, forcing his voice to calm. "Clark. You've been in this universe for less than 4 hours. You don't understand the complexities of what you've just committed to. Then help me understand." Superman's expression softened. "Captain Kirk, I'm not trying to undermine your authority. But I am trying to protect your crew and your ship from becoming collateral damage in a conflict I apparently triggered just by existing." Spock cleared his throat. "If I may, Captain, Kal-El's logic, while unconventional, has merit. Commander Kor is bound by Klingon honor codes. If Kal-El defeats their warrior in fair combat, Kor must acknowledge the victory. It may, paradoxically, earn their respect rather than enmity. Or it makes them more determined to capture or kill him," Kirk countered. But he could feel the argument slipping away. Superman had made a command decision, rash, perhaps naive, but rooted in the same instinct that drove Kirk himself to take personal risks to protect his crew. Kirk turned to Uhura. "Lieutenant, open a secure channel to Starfleet Command. Encrypt it with today's codes. They need to know about our guest and the situation with the Klingon." "Aye, sir." To Spock, "Full sensor analysis of that asteroid field. I want to know every rock, every radiation signature, every potential tactical advantage or hazard. If we're doing this, we're going in with our eyes open." "Understood, Captain." Kirk faced Superman again. You've got 2 hours. In that time, we're going to brief you on Klingon combat doctrine, their weapons technology, and exactly what you're walking into. You might be nearly indestructible, but nearly leaves a lot of room for disaster. Superman nodded. I appreciate it, Captain. And I promise you, I won't kill anyone. No matter what happens, I won't cross that line. That might be the problem, McCoy muttered. Klingon respect warriors who kill. If you hold back, they might see it as weakness. Then they'll learn that strength and mercy aren't mutually exclusive. Superman's voice carried quiet conviction. It's a lesson my Earth needed to learn. Maybe this universe needs it too. Kirk wanted to argue further, but something in Superman's eyes stopped him. It was the look of someone who'd made peace with a hard choice, a look Kirk saw in his mirror after every no-win scenario he'd barely survived. All right, Kirk said finally. 2 hours. We prepare for every contingency. And Clark? He extended his hand. Try not to start an interstellar war on your first day here. Superman shook his hand with a slight smile. I'll do my best, Captain. As the bridge crew returned to their stations, preparing for what could be either a diplomatic breakthrough or a catastrophic escalation, Kirk couldn't shake one nagging thought. Kor had known. Known exactly when to be in position, known exactly what to look for. Someone had tipped off the Klingon. And if the Klingon knew about Superman's arrival, who else might be watching from the shadows? The asteroid field hung in space like frozen debris from some ancient cosmic collision, tumbling rocks ranging from pebble size to mountain mass drifting in lazy orbital patterns. The Enterprise and the Klingon battle cruiser faced each other across 2 kilometers of vacuum, their weapons powered down in accordance with the agreed terms, though Kirk had no illusions about how quickly that could change. In the briefing room, Superman stood before a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional rendering of a Klingon warrior in full combat stance. Spock manipulated controls, cycling through various attack patterns while McCoy administered what he insisted was a baseline physiological reading, though everyone knew it was really an excuse to scan Superman one more time, as if the doctor might suddenly discover some vulnerability he'd missed. Klingon hand-to-hand combat emphasizes brutal efficiency, Spock explained, his tone clinical. They favor strikes to vital areas, throat, solar plexus, joints. Their physical strength exceeds human norms by approximately 30%, and their pain tolerance is considerably higher. They are trained from childhood to view combat as the ultimate expression of honor. They're also mean as rattlesnakes and twice as likely to bite when cornered, McCoy added, not looking up from his tricorder. Your cellular density might make you invulnerable to their strikes, but that doesn't mean you understand their psychology. They'll try to goad you, insult you, provoke you into making mistakes. Superman watched the holographic Klingon execute a series of devastating strikes. I've faced opponents who wanted to kill me before, Doctor. I know how to keep my head. Have you killed? The question came from Kirk, who stood by the viewport watching the Klingon vessel. When you were pushed to the absolute limit, have you ever taken a life? The silence stretched long enough that everyone looked at Superman. His jaw tightened. And when he spoke, his voice was heavy with old grief. Yes. Once. A Kryptonian general named Zod. He had the same powers I did, and he threatened to destroy Earth if I didn't stop him. I tried everything, containment, exile, reasoning with him. But in the end... Superman's hands clenched into fists. In the end, there was no other way. And I've spent every day since making sure I never face that choice again. Kirk turned from the viewport, studying Superman with new understanding. Then you know what's at stake when power meets ideology. Zod believed might made him right to rule. The Klingon believe strength proves honor. You'll be facing more than a warrior out there, Clark, you'll be facing everything that warrior represents to his culture. Which is precisely why your strategy must be carefully calculated, Spock interjected. If you defeat Lieutenant Card too easily, Commander Kor may interpret it as humiliation requiring vengeance. If you struggle excessively, he may perceive weakness to be exploited. You must find the equilibrium point where victory demonstrates capability without triggering escalation. Superman looked at Spock with something like respect. You're saying I need to win, but not too convincingly. Make it look like a fair fight. Essentially correct. Though I would phrase it as, demonstrate measured superiority while respecting Klingon cultural values regarding honorable combat. Jim, McCoy said, frowning at his readings, I'm picking up something odd. Clark's cellular energy absorption rate has dropped by about 15% since he came aboard. Superman's attention snapped to the doctor. What? Your cells were processing stellar radiation at impossible efficiency when we first detected you. Now that efficiency is declining. Slowly, but measurably. McCoy looked genuinely concerned. It's like your biology is adapting to something, or struggling against something. Spock moved quickly to his station, pulling up sensor data. Fascinating. The Enterprise's deflector shields and hull plating filter various forms of radiation as a safety measure. It appears Kal-El's physiology requires direct, unfiltered exposure to specific wavelengths of stellar radiation to maintain optimal function. You're saying the ship is making me weaker. Superman's voice carried an edge of alarm. Not weaker, less efficient, Spock corrected. Your baseline capabilities remain extraordinary. However, if this trend continues, you may find yourself operating at diminished capacity during extended exposure to shielded environments. Kirk's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. How diminished are we talking? Will you be able to handle Karg? Superman flexed his hands experimentally, as if testing his own strength. I feel fine. Maybe a little, muted. Like there's static on a radio signal. But I'm still stronger and faster than any human I've ever encountered. That may not be sufficient against a Klingon warrior, Spock observed. Lieutenant Karg is not human. Then I adapt, Superman said firmly. I've learned to control my abilities my entire life. If they're reduced here, I work within those limitations. It doesn't change what needs to be done. Kirk made his decision. We transport you to the asteroid as planned. But at the first sign you're in serious trouble, I'm beaming you back regardless of the diplomatic consequences. Understood? Captain. Those are my terms, Clark. You might not be Federation, but you're on my ship and under my watch. I don't abandon people to prove a point. Superman met Kirk's gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared values, different philosophies built on the same foundation of protecting others. Understood, Captain. The intercom chirped. Bridge to Captain Kirk. Commander Kor is hailing us. He's growing impatient. Kirk tapped the panel. On my way. Kirk out. He looked at Superman. Ready? As I'll ever be. They arrived on the bridge to find the viewscreen showing Kor's face, his expression a mixture of anticipation and barely concealed eagerness. Behind him stood a massive Klingon warrior, Lieutenant Karg, presumably, whose scarred face and muscular frame spoke to decades of violent survival. Ah, Captain Kirk. I was beginning to think your champion had reconsidered. Kor's smile was predatory. Karg here has been eager to test himself against this Kal-El. He finds the prospect of fighting an opponent who survives vacuum, stimulating. Karg stepped forward, his voice a deep rumble. I have killed many warriors, Federation dog. Your pet creature will be another skull for my collection. Superman stepped into Kor's view, his cape settling around his shoulders. I'm nobody's pet. And I'm not interested in your collection. But if this fight will resolve our standoff peacefully, then let's get it done. Karg's eyes narrowed, studying Superman with the gaze of a predator evaluating prey. You are smaller than I expected. Softer. The Federation breeds weakness, it seems. "Lieutenant," Superman said quietly, "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away from this. Not because I'm afraid of you, but because I don't want to hurt you." The Klingon bridge erupted in harsh laughter. Karg's expression twisted into something between rage and amusement. "You offer me mercy?" "Me?" He slammed his fist against his chest. "I am Karg, son of Mok, slayer of the Gevrik beast, warrior of the Empire. I do not accept mercy from weaklings who wear capes like ceremonial robes." "Then we fight," Superman said simply. Kor's smile widened. "Excellent. The arena is prepared, asteroid Sigma 7, designated coordinates. No weapons, no armor, no interference from either vessel. Combat continues until one warrior yields, is incapacitated, or dies. These are the terms. Do you accept, Kal-El?" "I accept." "Captain Kirk, do you accept as witness for the Federation?" Kirk's expression was stone. "I accept. But I reserve the right to intervene if the terms are violated." "As do I." Kor leaned back in his command chair. "Let us see what this being is truly made of. Kapla, Lieutenant Karg. May your victory bring glory to the Empire." The transmission ended. Kirk turned to Superman. "Last chance to reconsider." "No second thoughts, Captain. Let's finish this." In the transporter room, Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott stood at the controls, his expression troubled. "Captain, I've configured the transporter to beam him back at your signal, but if there's significant energy discharge or weapons fire, I can't guarantee a clean lock." "Do your best, Scotty." Kirk placed a hand on Superman's shoulder. "Clark, listen to me. Klingon honor is a double-edged sword. They respect strength, but they also expect their warriors to fight to the death. If you hold back too much, Kor might interpret it as disrespect. And if I don't hold back enough, I might kill someone I didn't want to kill." Superman stepped onto the transporter pad. "Captain, I've spent my whole life trying to find the balance between power and restraint. This is just another test of that balance. A test where the consequences extend beyond one person," Spock observed. "Your performance will influence Klingon perceptions of Federation capability for years to come." Superman nodded slowly, the weight of that responsibility settling visibly on his shoulders. "Then I'll make it count." Kirk stepped back, nodding to Scotty. "Energize." The transporter beam caught Superman in its shimmering embrace, and he dissolved into streams of light and energy. Seconds later, he materialized on the surface of asteroid Sigma 7, a roughly spherical rock 300 meters in diameter, its surface pockmarked with craters and covered in fine regolith dust. The gravity was minimal, barely a fraction of Earth standard. Superman adjusted his stance, feeling the different physics of this environment. Overhead, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, and in the distance, both the Enterprise and the Klingon battle cruiser hung like watchful gods. On the opposite side of the small arena, a second transporter beam deposited Lieutenant Karg. The Klingon warrior rolled his massive shoulders, his breath misting in the thin atmosphere his body could tolerate for the duration of combat. He grinned, revealing sharp teeth. "Now, Federation pet," Karg growled, his voice carrying across the vacuum through the communicator each combatant wore, "now we discover if you bleed." Superman settled into a defensive stance, his cape barely moving in the negligible gravity. "I'm hoping we don't have to find out." Karg's laughter was harsh and cruel. "Then you have already lost." The Klingon warrior charged. Karg moved with shocking speed for someone his size, his boots finding purchase on the asteroid's surface through sheer force of will and practiced technique. Superman held his ground, watching the Klingon close the distance in powerful, loping strides that ate up the space between them. The first strike came fast, a devastating right hook aimed at Superman's jaw. Clark didn't dodge. He wanted to understand what he was dealing with, to measure the Klingon strength against his own diminished capabilities. The fist connected with a sound like metal striking stone. Karg's eyes widened as his knuckles met immovable resistance. Superman's head didn't snap back. Didn't move at all. It was like punching a statue carved from neutronium. Impossible, Kirk breathed. Then Superman moved. His counterstrike was measured, controlled, a palm strike to Kirk's chest that sent the Klingon warrior tumbling backward across the asteroid's surface. In the low gravity, Kirk sailed 15 meters before managing to arrest his momentum by driving his hands into the regolith like anchors. On the Enterprise bridge, Kirk leaned forward in his chair, watching the engagement on the main view screen. Spock stood at his science station, sensors locked onto both combatants. Kal-El's approach is tactically sound, Spock observed. He allowed the Klingon to attack first, establishing his defensive capabilities while gathering data on his opponent's methodology. He's also showing Kirk that he can take whatever the Klingon dishes out, McCoy added from his position near the medical station. Question is, can he keep it up? Those cellular efficiency readings are still dropping. Kirk's jaw tightened. How much longer before it becomes a problem? Unknown, Captain. But at current degradation rates, I'd estimate he has perhaps 30 to 40 minutes before his strength decreases to merely superhuman rather than functionally invulnerable. Merely superhuman, Kirk muttered. Bones, in any other context, that would sound absurd. On the asteroid, Kirk had regained his footing. His expression had shifted from confident contempt to something more dangerous, respect tinged with rage. You are strong. Good. Killing a weak opponent brings no honor. The Klingon drew a wicked-looking blade from his boot, a DK Tog, its primary blade flanked by two smaller side blades that snapped into position with practiced ease. Superman's eyes narrowed. I thought this was hand-to-hand combat. It is, Kirk grinned. My hand holds the blade. That is the hand I use to fight. Unless the mighty Kal-El fears Klingon steel. Superman could hear Kirk's voice crackling over his communicator. Clark, that's a violation of the agreed terms. You're within your rights to withdraw. But Superman understood what was happening. This was another test, not of strength, but of courage. If he withdrew now, Kirk would claim the Federation warrior feared a simple knife. The psychological victory would be Kor's. I'm not withdrawing, Captain. Kapla. Kirk roared, approval clear in his voice. A warrior's choice. Now we fight as warriors should. The Klingon attacked again, but this time with trained precision rather than testing strikes. The DK Tog flickered in the starlight, following attack patterns honed through decades of combat. Thrust, parry, slash, each movement designed to find weakness, to exploit opening, to kill. Superman didn't retreat. Instead, he did something that made both Kirk and the watching crews hold their breath. He caught the blade. His hand closed around the DK Tog's primary edge, stopping its downward slash with absolute finality. The blade didn't pierce his palm. Didn't even scratch the skin. It simply stopped, as if it had struck an invisible force field. Your steel is impressive, Superman said quietly. But I've been tested by stronger forces than this. He squeezed. The DK Tog shattered, fragments of blade scattering across the asteroid's surface like metallic snow. Kirk stared at his empty hand, then at Superman, then at the shattered remains of a weapon that had served him through countless battles. By Kalis, Kirk whispered. What are you? Someone who doesn't want to fight, Superman replied. But someone who will if he must. Lieutenant Kirk, I'm asking you again, yield. There's no shame in recognizing when you're outmatched. Kirk's face contorted with emotion, rage, confusion, and something that might have been fear. But beneath it all was the iron core of Klingon warrior culture, the belief that death in combat was preferable to surrender. Never, Kirk snarled. I am Klingon. We do not yield. We do not surrender. We fight until victory or death. He charged again, this time weaponless but no less dangerous. His hands struck like hammers, his elbows and knees finding angles of attack that would cripple human opponents. Superman blocked, deflected, absorbed, never retaliating with full force, always pulling his counterstrikes to non-lethal levels. But with each exchange, Superman could feel the difference. The static in his cells was growing stronger. His movements were still superhuman, but the effortless power he was accustomed to required more concentration, more conscious effort. The Enterprise's filtered radiation had weakened him more than he'd anticipated. On the Klingon battle cruiser, Commander Kor watched the fight with eyes that missed nothing. His tactical officer leaned close, speaking in low tones. "Commander, Kal-El is holding back. Every strike he lands is measured. He could have killed Karg a dozen times over." "I know," Kor replied, his voice thoughtful. "The question is why? Is it mercy? Weakness? Or strategy?" "Perhaps," a new voice interjected, "it is simply who he is." Kor turned to find his science officer, a older Klingon named Malak, studying sensor readings. "Elaborate." "Our sensors detect power fluctuation in the entity. He is not at full capacity, something about Federation ship shielding interferes with his energy absorption. Yet even diminished, he dominates Karg. He could end this fight with a single blow." Malak looked at Kor with an expression that might have been respect. "But he chooses not to. That is not weakness, Commander. That is control. Perhaps the most dangerous kind of strength." Kor's eyes returned to the view screen, his mind recalculating. A being of such power who exercises restraint. Interesting. Back on the asteroid, the fight had reached a critical juncture. Karg, breathing hard, his armor dented and scorched from the intensity of their exchange, stood hunched but defiant. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, not from Superman's strikes, but from where the Klingon had slammed his own head against Superman's shoulder in a desperate headbutt that accomplished nothing except self-injury. "Why won't you finish it?" Karg demanded, frustration and genuine confusion warring in his voice. "You have the power. I have seen it. Yet you dance around me like I am a child you fear to harm. Fight me with your true strength, coward." Superman floated a few inches off the asteroid's surface, his cape rippling slightly in the solar wind. When he spoke, his voice carried across the communicators with quiet intensity. "I am fighting with my true strength, Lieutenant. My strength isn't just physical power, it's choosing when to use it and when to show restraint. You call me coward for not killing you. I call that civilization. I call that being more than just a weapon." Civilization, Karg spat the word like a curse. Civilization is what the weak build to protect themselves from the strong. In nature, the powerful take what they wish. That is truth. That is honor. "No," Superman said firmly. "That's just another form of tyranny dressed up in warrior poetry. I've heard that speech before, Lieutenant. General Zod gave a version of it before I had to stop him permanently. Darkseid preached it while trying to enslave worlds. Every tyrant I've ever fought believed might made them right." He drifted closer, his blue eyes intense. "But I've also seen kindergarten teachers change the world one student at a time. Farmers feeding families. Scientists curing diseases. None of them had power like mine. But every one of them had something I'll never possess, the courage to be ordinary and still do extraordinary things." Karg stared at him, something shifting behind those warriors' eyes. "You mock me. I'm telling you the truth. Your strength as a warrior is impressive. But it's not the only kind of strength that matters." On the Enterprise, McCoy glanced at Kirk. "Jim, did he just give a Klingon a philosophical lecture in the middle of combat?" "Apparently." Kirk couldn't quite suppress a slight smile. "And unless I'm reading that Klingon's body language wrong, it's working." Spock raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating. Kal-El is attempting to win not by defeating his opponent physically, but by challenging the ideological foundation that makes the combat necessary. An unexpectedly sophisticated strategy." Karg stood motionless for a long moment, his massive frame silhouetted against the stars. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less certain, more thoughtful. You speak as no warrior I have encountered. You have power to crush me, yet you lecture. You could have glory, yet you choose words. He looked down at his hands, at the shattered remains of his DK Tog scattered across the regolith. My father would call you weak. My commander would call you dangerous. He paused, then looked up at Superman with an expression that was almost vulnerable. I do not know what to call you. Call me someone who hopes we don't have to be enemies. Karg's jaw worked, wrestling with concepts that clearly challenged everything his culture had taught him. Then, slowly, he straightened. You have won this combat, Kal-El. Not because you defeated me, though you have, but because you have given me much to consider. He turned toward the distant Klingon cruiser. I yield. The words hung in the vacuum like a declaration that shattered convention. On the Enterprise, the bridge erupted in surprised murmurs. On the Klingon vessel, Kor's expression was unreadable. Superman extended his hand. Thank you, Lieutenant. That took more courage than continuing to fight. Karg stared at the offered hand, a gesture of respect between equals, then clasped Superman's forearm in the Klingon manner. You are a strange being, Kal-El. But perhaps that is not an insult. The transporter beams claimed both combatants simultaneously, returning Karg to the Klingon battle cruiser and Superman to the Enterprise. Clark materialized on the transporter pad looking none the worse for wear, though Scotty's instruments registered unusual energy fluctuations in his biosignature. Welcome back, lad, Scotty said, relief evident in his voice. That was some fighting, if you can call it that. Looked more like a philosophy lecture with the occasional punch thrown in. Superman stepped down from the pad, rolling his shoulders. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to change what you're fighting about. He paused, feeling the strange static in his cells intensify now that he was back within the Enterprise's shielded environment. Mr. Scott, is there any way to get me closer to unfiltered stellar radiation? Being inside the ship is affecting my abilities. I noticed the power drop in your bio readings during transport. Scotty's fingers danced across his controls, pulling up engineering schematics. We've got observation decks with minimal shielding on Deck 7, and the Stellar Cartography Lab has direct viewport access without deflector interference. Either of those might help. Thank you. The intercom chirped. Bridge to Superman. Captain Kirk requests your presence immediately. Superman exchanged glances with Scotty, then tapped the panel. On my way. He found the bridge in a state of controlled tension. Kor's face dominated the view screen, and the Klingon commander's expression was a complex mixture of emotions, respect, calculation, and something that might have been genuine curiosity. Kal-El returns, Kor said as Superman entered. A remarkable performance. Lieutenant Karg speaks highly of you, which, from a Klingon warrior, is high praise indeed. He says you fight like no one he has encountered. I wasn't trying to fight at all, Superman replied honestly. I was trying to end the situation without unnecessary bloodshed. Yes. Most curious. Kor leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. You defeated a trained Klingon warrior while barely exerting yourself. You shattered his blade with your bare hand. Yet you deliberately held back, refused to claim victory through his death. The Empire finds this philosophically interesting. Kirk stood from his command chair. Commander Kor, our agreement was clear. Superman defeated your champion. Now you withdraw from this sector. Indeed. Klingon honor their agreements, Kirk, unlike some Federation captains I could name. Kor's smile was sharp. However, before I depart, I believe I owe Kal-El the information I promised. The truth of how we knew to be in position to witness his arrival. The bridge fell silent. Superman moved to stand beside Kirk, his attention fixed on Kor. 3 days ago, Core began, the Empire received an encoded transmission from an unknown source. It contained precise coordinates, a temporal marker, and a warning: a being of immense power will appear at these space-time coordinates. Whoever claims him first will possess a strategic advantage that could shift the balance of galactic politics. Core paused. We were not the only ones to receive this message. Kirk's jaw tightened. Who else? The Romulan Star Empire, certainly. Perhaps others. The transmission was sophisticated, routed through multiple subspace relays, encrypted with algorithms even our best codebreakers struggled to decrypt. Someone wanted various powers to know about Kal-El's arrival, and they wanted us fighting over him. Spock moved to his science station, his fingers flying across controls. Captain, I am cross-referencing the subspace distortion that coincided with Kal-El's arrival. The energy signature contains components consistent with artificial enhancement. This was not purely a natural phenomenon. Superman's expression darkened. You're saying someone deliberately pulled me into this universe? It would appear so, Spock replied. The Kryptonian crystal technology you described could not, by itself, breach dimensional barriers. However, if it were subjected to a focused subspace inversion field at precisely the correct frequency. Someone used my own research against me, Superman said quietly, anger threading through his voice. They weaponized the Fortress's systems to tear me from my reality. But why? McCoy demanded. What's the point of dragging you across dimensions just to set a bunch of warring factions on you? Chaos, Core answered, his tone almost admiring. Or perhaps opportunity. If the major powers of this galaxy are focused on acquiring or neutralizing Kal-El, they are distracted from other activities. Or perhaps whoever sent that message simply wishes to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. He smiled coldly. In any case, Kal-El, you are now a piece on a game board you did not choose to enter. Commander, Kirk said carefully, are you suggesting cooperation? Between the Federation and the Empire? Core laughed, a genuine, booming sound. Cooperation? No, Kirk. But perhaps, non-interference. Kal-El has proven he is no simple weapon to be claimed. And whoever arranged his arrival clearly wishes to manipulate us all. The Empire has no love for being manipulated by shadows. He paused, his expression growing serious. Consider this a professional courtesy from one commander to another. The Romulans will not be as honorable as the Empire. They will not challenge Kal-El to open combat. They will scheme, deceive, and attempt to control him through more subtle means. Watch your backs, Federation. And watch the shadows. The transmission ended, and the Klingon battle cruiser began to bank away, its warp nacelles glowing as it prepared to leave the sector. Kirk turned to Superman. Well. This just became significantly more complicated. Captain, Uhura interrupted, I'm receiving a Priority 1 distress call. It's from the Federation colony on Ceti Alpha V. They report a massive geological disaster, volcanic eruptions across 3 continents, atmospheric contamination reaching critical levels. They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance. Kirk's hand slammed down on his armrest. Ceti Alpha V. That's 6 light years from here. Even at maximum warp, we're 3 hours away. Mr. Spock, are there any other Federation vessels in range? Spock checked his sensors, his expression grave. Negative, Captain. The USS Lexington is 4.2 light-years distant, the USS Constellation is undergoing repairs at Starbase 12. We are the only vessel capable of rendering assistance within any reasonable time frame. 3 hours, McCoy said, his medical mind already calculating. Jim, if their atmospheric contamination is as bad as they're reporting, those colonists don't have 3 hours. They have minutes. Superman stepped forward. Captain Kirk, I can get there faster. Every head on the bridge turned toward him. Clark, Kirk said carefully, you've been in this universe for less than 6 hours. You don't know the territory, you don't know the colony layout, and your powers are being affected by. Which is why I need to get away from artificial shielding and back into open space. Superman's voice was firm but not aggressive. Captain, those people are dying. If I leave now, fly at full speed, I can reach Ceti Alpha V in less than 30 minutes. Even if that's true, Spock interjected, what precisely do you intend to do when you arrive? You cannot evacuate an entire colony single-handedly. No, but I can stabilize the immediate threats. Seal volcanic fissures, reinforce failing structures, buy them time until the Enterprise arrives with proper evacuation capabilities. Superman met Kirk's eyes. Sir, I know you have protocols, procedures, chains of command. But right now, those protocols are measuring time in hours while people are measuring their lives in minutes. Let me help. Kirk stood, his command instincts at war with his cautious nature. Everything in Starfleet training screamed against sending an unknown entity, whose powers they barely understood, whose loyalties were uncertain, whose presence had already attracted hostile attention, to handle a crisis situation alone. But underneath that training was the core belief that had defined James T. Kirk's career: when lives were at stake, you did whatever necessary to save them. Mr. Spock, plot a course to Ceti Alpha V, maximum warp. We leave in 2 minutes. Kirk turned to Superman. Clark, you go ahead. Assess the situation, do what you can to stabilize it. But, and this is non-negotiable, you check in every 5 minutes. If I lose contact with you, if anything goes wrong, you fall back immediately. Understood? Superman nodded. Understood, Captain. Thank you. Scotty, Kirk addressed the intercom, prepare to beam our guest into open space. And give him one of our communicators, I want constant contact. Aye, Captain. As Superman turned toward the turbolift, McCoy caught his arm. Son, be careful out there. We still don't know what caused your powers to fluctuate. If they fail at the wrong moment. They won't, Doctor. Once I'm back in direct starlight, I'll be fine. Superman's expression softened. But thank you for the concern. In the transporter room, Scotty handed Superman a communicator modified to attach to his cape clasp. It's set to our emergency frequency. Just speak normally, it'll pick up your voice even in vacuum. Impressive technology. Superman examined the small device before securing it. Mr. Scott, in my universe, we have nothing like this. The ability to disassemble and reassemble matter at a distance, it's remarkable. Aye, when it works properly. Scotty's expression turned serious. Lad, I don't know what ye are or where ye came from. But the captain's putting a lot of faith in ye. Donna make him regret it. I won't. Superman stepped onto the transporter pad. Energize. The beam caught him, and seconds later he materialized in open space 100 meters from the Enterprise's hull. Immediately, he felt the difference. Without the ship's shields filtering the stellar radiation, his cells began absorbing energy with familiar efficiency. The static cleared, the muted sensation vanished, and power flooded back through him like water finding its natural course. He tested his abilities, speed, strength, flight control. Everything responded perfectly. Whatever interference the Enterprise's systems had caused, direct exposure to stellar radiation countered it completely. Enterprise, this is Superman. I'm clear of the ship and all systems are nominal. Heading to Ceti Alpha V now. Kirk's voice crackled through the communicator. Acknowledged, Superman. We'll be right behind you. And Clark? Good luck. Superman oriented himself toward Ceti Alpha V's stellar coordinates, which Spock had transmitted to his communicator's navigation system. 6 light-years. In his universe, traversing such distances had been theoretically possible but never attempted, the speeds required approached physics-breaking velocities. But these weren't his universe's physics. And those colonists didn't have time for theoretical limitations. Superman accelerated. Behind him, the Enterprise dwindled to a point of light, then vanished entirely as he exceeded their sensor range. Around him, stars began to streak and blur as he pushed toward speeds he'd never dared attempt in Earth's atmosphere. The vacuum offered no friction, no resistance, just the pure conversion of solar energy into kinetic force. He had no way of knowing that in the shadows between stars, Romulan sensors tracked his departure with cold, calculating interest. Or that deep within the Enterprise's computer systems, a fragment of code, planted during the ship's last starbase maintenance, awakened and began transmitting his course to unknown recipients. All Superman knew was that somewhere ahead, people needed help. And for the first time since arriving in this strange universe, he was doing what he'd always done best. He was going to save them. Ceti Alpha V materialized from a point of light to a planet-sized sphere in less time than Superman had anticipated. He decelerated hard, bleeding off velocity as the world's details resolved, a Class M planet with 3 major continents, extensive oceans, an atmosphere that should have been pristine blue but was instead choked with ash-gray volcanic discharge. Even from orbit, he could see the devastation. Multiple volcanic eruptions dotted the largest continent like angry red wounds, spewing magma and toxic gases into the atmosphere. Entire sections of what his enhanced vision identified as colonial settlements were collapsing, buildings crumbling under seismic stress. Enterprise, this is Superman. I've reached Ceti Alpha V. The situation is worse than reported. I count at least 15 active volcanic sites, and the primary settlement is directly in the path of a pyroclastic flow that'll reach them in, he calculated based on the flow's speed and distance, approximately 8 minutes. Kirk's voice came through with slight distortion from the distance. Can you stop it? Superman's X-ray vision penetrated the planet's crust, revealing the nightmare scenario beneath. The planet's tectonic structure is catastrophically unstable. Something triggered a chain reaction in the mantle. This isn't natural geological activity. It's too coordinated, too simultaneous. He focused on the immediate threat. I can divert the pyroclastic flow, but Captain, these eruptions were deliberately induced. Someone did this. A pause, then Spock's voice, Kal-El, scan for artificial energy signatures, particularly subspace inversion fields similar to the one that brought you to this universe. Superman adjusted his vision, filtering through electromagnetic spectra until he found it, a faint but distinct energy signature emanating from deep within the planet's core. Got it. There's a device approximately 30 kilometers beneath the surface, generating a resonance field that's destabilizing the tectonic plates. Can you reach it? Kirk asked. Not in 8 minutes. But I can save the colonists first, then deal with the device. Superman didn't wait for confirmation. He dove toward the planet's surface, atmospheric entry heating his uniform harmlessly as he descended like a falling star. The colonial settlement was in chaos. Thousands of people, men, women, children, fled through streets clogged with debris and volcanic ash. Buildings groaned and collapsed. Emergency sirens wailed uselessly against the roar of approaching doom. Superman hit the ground running, his impact cratering the permacrete street. A woman nearby screamed in shock, but he was already moving, his superspeed allowing him to assess the situation in microseconds. Priority 1, the pyroclastic flow. It roared down the mountainside like an avalanche of superheated gas and rock, incinerating everything in its path. Temperature, over 700 degrees Celsius. Speed, approximately 200 kilometers per hour. Distance to settlement, less than 3 kilometers. Superman launched himself toward it. He met the flow head-on, his body becoming a living shield. The superheated gases washed over him harmlessly, but the kinetic force was immense, millions of tons of material moving with devastating momentum. He dug his feet into the mountainside and pushed back, his muscles straining not from the temperature but from the sheer mass. The flow began to split around him like water around a stone, dividing into 2 channels that curved away from the settlement. But it wasn't enough, the redirected flows would still catch the colony's edges. Superman's eyes flared red. Twin beams of concentrated heat vision lanced out, not to destroy but to create. He carved trenches in the mountainside, artificial channels that guided the pyroclastic flows away from populated areas and into uninhabited valleys. The precision required was extraordinary. Too shallow and the flows would overflow, too deep and he risked triggering additional collapses. Enterprise, primary threat diverted. Moving to structural stabilization. He became a blur, moving through the settlement at speeds that made him nearly invisible. A residential tower tilted dangerously. He braced it with one hand while evacuating the remaining occupants with the other, moving families to safety faster than they could process what was happening. A fissure opened in the main street, threatening to swallow a school. He sealed it with rubble compressed into makeshift barriers by pressure from his hands. A child's cry caught his super hearing. Second floor of a collapsing medical center, northwest corner, trapped under debris. Superman crashed through the wall, found the boy pinned under a fallen support beam, and lifted the multi-ton structure with one hand while gently extracting the child with the other. "You're safe," he said softly, flying the boy to a designated emergency shelter that colonists had established. "Stay here. Help is coming." The boy stared at him with wide eyes, too shocked for words. But an older woman, the settlement's administrator based on her uniform, grabbed Superman's arm as he turned to leave. "Who are you? What are you?" "Someone trying to help. Get everyone to the shelters, this isn't over yet." He shot back into the sky, his communicator crackling. "Enterprise, I need geological data. The device in the planet's core, it's generating a specific resonance frequency. If I can counter it, I might be able to stop the eruptions." Spock's response came quickly. "Transmitting harmonic analysis now. However, Kal-El, the device is protected by 30 kilometers of planetary crust. Even if you could reach it, the pressure and temperature at that depth would be—" "I can handle the heat and pressure," Superman interrupted, already descending toward the largest volcanic vent. "But I need to know exactly what frequency to disrupt. The resonance operates at 147.3 Hz with harmonic overtones at—" An explosion of pain erupted across Superman's back. He tumbled from the sky, his equilibrium disrupted by something that actually hurt. He crashed into the side of a mountain, cratering the rock face, his vision blurring momentarily before his invulnerability reasserted itself. "What the—" A second impact, this time across his chest. Energy discharge, not kinetic force. His uniform's symbol scorched slightly, the first damage it had taken since arriving in this universe. Superman's vision cleared, and he saw them, 3 vessels decloaking in low orbit, their distinctive bird-of-prey design immediately identifiable from the briefing Spock had given him. Romulan warbirds. "Enterprise," Superman said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "we have company. 3 Romulan vessels just decloaked and fired on me with some kind of directed energy weapon." Kirk's voice came through sharp with alarm. "Superman, those are disruptor arrays modified for high-intensity discharge. They won't kill you, but if they've calibrated them for your energy signature, they can hurt me." "Yeah, I noticed." Superman assessed the situation. The Romulans were maintaining position between him and the settlement, their weapons arrays glowing as they recharged. Below, the volcanic activity continued unabated. The device in the planet's core pulsed with malevolent purpose. A new voice crackled through communications, cold, female, laced with calculated superiority. "Kal-El. I am Commander Liviana of the Romulan Star Empire. You will cease your interference with our operation and surrender yourself to Romulan custody. Comply, and the colonists will be spared. Resist, and we will reduce the settlement to ash. Your operation." Superman's hands clenched into fists. "You did this. You triggered these eruptions, murdered innocent people, just to, what? Capture me?" "To test you," Liviana corrected. "And to demonstrate a fundamental truth, even beings of impossible power can be controlled if one understands their weaknesses." You have a rather predictable weakness, Kal-El, you cannot tolerate suffering. It makes you manageable. On the Enterprise bridge, Kirk was already shouting orders. Mr. Sulu, maximum warp. How long until we're in weapons range? 17 minutes, Captain. Not good enough. Kirk spun to Spock. Options. Limited, Captain. The Romulans have positioned themselves to use Kal-El's predictable heroism against him. If he attacks them, they destroy the colony. If he attempts to address the planetary instability, they attack him. Classic tactical pincer. Damn it. Kirk's mind raced through scenarios, discarding strategies that wouldn't work in time. Superman, do you copy? I copy, Captain. You need to make a choice. I know it's not one you want to make, but I already made it. Superman's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Those Romulans think they've trapped me in an impossible situation. They're wrong. There's always a choice. He accelerated straight down, not up toward the Romulan vessels but down toward the planet's surface. The warbuds fired, their disruptor beams tracking him, scorching his cape and uniform but not stopping his descent. Enterprise, I'm going for the device in the planet's core. Once it's destroyed, the eruptions will stop and the colonists will be safe. The Romulans lose their leverage. Clark, McCoy's voice cut in, you'll be 30 kilometers underground. Even if you survive the trip down, how will you navigate? How will you know where? I'll follow the energy signature. And Doctor? Superman smiled, though no one could see it. I've held a black hole in my hands. I've flown through solar flares. 30 kilometers of rock and magma. I've faced worse. He slammed into the largest volcanic vent like a missile. The impact sending shockwaves across the settlement. Colonists stumbled, thinking it was another seismic event, not realizing they'd just witnessed someone voluntarily diving into hell itself. The heat was immediate and intense. Not painful, Superman's cells converted thermal energy as efficiently as solar radiation, but disorienting. His X-ray vision struggled through the density of compressed rock and flowing magma. The pressure increased with every meter of descent, thousands of tons per square inch that would crush any normal material into atomic paste. Superman pushed deeper, using the energy signature as his beacon. Around him, magma parted before his passage, flowing around his invulnerable form like water. He'd entered territory no human had ever experienced directly, the violent, primal realm beneath a planet's skin where continents were forged and destroyed in slow, inevitable cycles. Enterprise, signal, breaking up, his communicator struggled against the interference. Spock's voice came through fragmented, 14 kilometers, continue, heading, magnetic, interference. Then silence. The communicator had reached its limits. Superman was alone in the dark heart of a dying world, with nothing but determination and the faint pulse of artificial energy to guide him toward a device designed by an enemy he'd never met, to destroy a colony he'd just discovered, all to trap him in a game whose rules he was only beginning to understand. Above, Commander Liviana watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The fool has buried himself. Even if he reaches the device, the power required to destroy it will trigger a collapse that buries him for decades, if not permanently. Her tactical officer nodded. And the Enterprise? Will arrive to find a choice, attempt to rescue their new pet and violate Romulan territory, or abandon him and lose their strategic asset. Either outcome serves the Empire. Liviana's smile was cold. Inform the Tal Shir that Phase 1 is complete. Kal-El is contained. But 30 kilometers below, surrounded by crushing pressure and searing heat, Superman's hand closed around something metallic and wrong, a device that pulsed with the same subspace signature that had torn him from his universe. And as his fingers tightened, crushing the device's protective casing, he made a promise to himself: whoever orchestrated this, whoever weaponized his compassion against him, whoever tried to turn his desire to help into a trap, they were going to learn that Superman wasn't so easy to contain. The device screamed as Superman's fingers penetrated its shielding, not audibly, but across subspace frequencies that resonated through the planetary crust like a dying creature's final wail. Up close, it was revealed as a sophisticated piece of technology, a crystalline core surrounded by concentric rings of unknown alloy, all pulsing with energy signatures that Superman's enhanced senses recognized from the Fortress of Solitude. Kryptonian technology. Or something built to mimic it. So that's how they knew, Superman muttered, his voice lost in the roar of surrounding magma. They didn't just pull me here, they studied where I came from first. The device's harmonic resonance intensified as he gripped it tighter, as if sensing its impending destruction. The energy output spiked, triggering fresh seismic activity. Superman could feel tremors propagating through the mantle, new fissures opening in the crust above. He had seconds to make a decision: destroy the device quickly and risk the catastrophic energy release Liviana had anticipated, or find a way to safely neutralize it. But safely wasn't an option the Romulans had left him. Superman's eyes blazed red. Concentrated heat vision, focused not on destruction but on surgical precision. He carved through the device's outer rings, separating the power distribution system from the resonance core. Sparks of exotic energy erupted around him, subspace discharge that would have vaporized any normal being but merely tingled against his invulnerable skin. The tremors began to subside. The device's pulse weakened. Then the trap revealed itself. The crystalline core contained a compressed antimatter charge, small by Starship standards but more than sufficient to trigger a mantle collapse if detonated. And Superman's interference had armed it. A countdown display materialized in the crystal's depths, holographic numbers descending: 47, 46, 45. Of course they did, Superman said grimly. He couldn't disarm it, the containment field was too sophisticated, likely booby-trapped against tampering. He couldn't leave it, the explosion would achieve exactly what the device's initial function had failed to do: destroy the colony and everyone in it. Which left one option. Superman wrapped both hands around the device, tore it free from its moorings in the planet's mantle, and rocketed upward. 30 kilometers of superheated rock and magma stood between him and open space. The countdown continued: 32, 31, 30. He flew faster than he'd ever flown, converting every available photon of absorbed solar energy into kinetic force. The rock around him shattered from the shockwave of his passage, creating a tunnel that immediately began collapsing behind him as magma rushed to fill the void. 20, 19, 18. He burst through a volcanic vent, debris and lava fontaining around him as he emerged into Ceti Alpha V's ash-choked atmosphere. The 3 Romulan warbuds detected him immediately, weapons systems tracking his trajectory. Target has re-emerged, the tactical officer reported to Commander Liviana. He's carrying the device. Liviana's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into cold calculation. All vessels, evasive maneuvers. If that device detonates in atmosphere. 12, 11, 10. Superman didn't head for orbit. He angled toward the lead Romulan warbird, Liviana's flagship, accelerating to ramming speed with a device that could vaporize everything within a 50-kilometer radius. He's on a collision course, the helmsman shouted. Impossible. He wouldn't, Liviana stopped, realization dawning. He's bluffing. He won't risk the colony. But Superman's trajectory didn't waver. His expression, visible now on their viewscreen as he closed to visual range, carried no uncertainty. Only grim determination. 5, 4, 3. Evasive. Liviana screamed. The Romulan warbuds broke formation, their cloaking devices flaring as they attempted to engage stealth protocols. But Superman wasn't aiming for them anymore. At the last possible second, he veered straight up, breaking orbit with such velocity that the sonic boom shattered windows in the settlement below. 2, 1. He released the device at the apex of his climb, then used every ounce of strength to shield it with his body as the antimatter containment failed. The explosion was silent in vacuum, a sphere of pure annihilation that consumed the device, expanded outward, and broke against Superman's invulnerable form like a wave against an unbreakable shore. Energy that should have vaporized a small moon instead dispersed around him, bleeding off into space as radiation and heat. But even Superman had limits. The blast sent him tumbling through space, his vision whiting out from the sheer intensity of energy his cells were struggling to process and disperse. His uniform, already scorched from the Romulan disruptors, finally gave way, the cape disintegrating, the symbol on his chest barely visible through char and damage. On the Enterprise, now entering orbit of Ceti Alpha V, every sensor went momentarily haywire from the electromagnetic pulse. Report. Kirk barked. Spock fought to clear his screens. Massive antimatter detonation in high orbit. The energy signature matches. He paused, his stoic features showing rare concern. Captain, Kal-El was at the epicenter. Scotty, can you get a lock on him? Trying, sir, but the residual radiation is playing havoc with the sensors. Wait. I've got something. Faint life signs, tumbling trajectory. He's falling back toward the planet. Beam him aboard, now. I can't get a clean lock with all this interference. Then get a dirty lock. Do it, Mr. Scott. The transporter beam struggled to find coherence through the electromagnetic chaos, but Scotty's legendary skill with the technology won out. Superman materialized on the transporter pad in mid-tumble, unconscious, his uniform barely more than tatters, smoke rising from his exposed skin. McCoy was already moving with his medical kit before Scotty could call him. Get him to sickbay. And someone tell me what the hell just happened. In sickbay, Superman lay on a bio bed while McCoy's instruments went crazy trying to analyze his physiology. The burns on his skin were already healing, visible regeneration occurring at speeds that defied medical science. But he remained unconscious, his body's automatic systems prioritizing recovery over awareness. Kirk arrived moments later, Spock close behind. Status, Bones? Damned if I know, McCoy admitted, studying his scanners with a mixture of frustration and fascination. His cellular structure is regenerating damage faster than I can catalog it. He absorbed an antimatter explosion that would have destroyed this ship, and he's treating it like a bad sunburn. But the energy overload put his higher functions into some kind of protective shutdown. He's breathing, his heart's beating, or whatever passes for a heart in his biology, but he's out cold. How long? Kirk asked. Could be minutes, could be hours. Jim, I'm a doctor, not a Kryptonian physiologist. Spock moved to the bio bed, tricorder humming. Fascinating. His cellular energy absorption has increased significantly now that he's aboard the ship. It appears proximity to our warp core is providing his physiology with usable energy to accelerate recovery. Kirk's communicator chirped. Bridge to Captain. The Romulan vessels are hailing us. Commander Liviana demands to speak with you. Put her through down here. The wall monitor flickered to life, showing Liviana's face. Her expression was no longer coldly superior, it was rigidly controlled fury. Captain Kirk. Your pet weapon has destroyed Empire property and violated Romulan operational security. This is an act of war. Your operational security involved triggering geological disasters that killed Federation citizens and attempting to weaponize a being you deliberately transported into our universe, Kirk shot back, his command presence radiating through the screen. If anyone's committed an act of war, Commander, it's the Romulan Star Empire. You have no proof of Romulan involvement in the dimensional breach. Actually, Spock interjected smoothly, we have the remains of your resonance device. Its energy signature contains Romulan manufacturing markers, and its design incorporates stolen Kryptonian technology, suggesting extensive surveillance of Kal-El's universe prior to his force transition. I estimate Starfleet intelligence will find this data quite compelling. Liviana's jaw tightened. The device was a prototype. Experimental. Not sanctioned by the Romulan Senate. Perhaps. But certainly sanctioned by the Tal Shiar. Kirk's voice was steel. Here's what's going to happen, Commander. You're going to withdraw from this system immediately. You're going to transmit every piece of data you possess regarding the dimensional breach technology. And you're going to explain to your superiors that attempting to manipulate the Federation through false flag operations tends to backfire spectacularly. And if I refuse? Then I transmit our sensor logs to every Federation world, every neutral party, and every information broker in the quadrant. The galaxy learns that the Romulan Empire tried to weaponize an interdimensional kidnapping, murdered Federation colonists as bait, and got outmaneuvered by one man. Kirk smiled without humor. How's that for your operational security? Liviana stared at him for a long moment, calculating odds and options. Finally, she nodded once, sharp, controlled. You play a dangerous game, Kirk. I'm not playing, Commander. I'm commanding. There's a difference. The transmission cut. Moments later. The three Romulan warbuds engaged cloaking devices and vanished from sensors, their warp signatures indicating rapid withdrawal from Federation space. Kirk allowed himself a small exhale of relief, then looked at the unconscious Superman. He saved those colonists. Took an antimatter explosion meant to kill thousands and absorbed it himself. More than that, Captain, Spock said quietly. He forced the Romulans to reveal their hand prematurely. By diving into the planet rather than engaging them directly, he denied them their leverage. By carrying the device into space, he protected both the colony and our ship. His tactical thinking, while unconventional, was remarkably effective. Effective and nearly suicidal, McCoy grumbled, adjusting his instruments. Jim, he took damage we're still not sure he can fully recover from. And he did it without hesitation, without calculating the cost to himself. That kind of self-sacrifice is exactly what Starfleet officers do every day, Bones. Kirk placed a hand on Superman's shoulder, a gesture of respect between those who understood command decisions. The difference is, we usually don't survive the experience. Superman's eyes fluttered open. His vision focused slowly, taking in the unfamiliar medical bay, the concerned faces around him, the gentle hum of advanced technology keeping watch over his recovery. The colonists? His voice was rough but steady. Safe, Kirk assured him. The volcanic activity ceased when you destroyed the device. We're evacuating the injured to Starbase 12, but casualty numbers are far lower than they could have been. Thanks to you. Superman tried to sit up, wincing slightly. The Romulans? Gone. For now. Kirk's expression grew serious. But Clark, we need to talk about what just happened. You made decisions out there that could have gotten you killed, or worse, gotten those colonists killed if your gamble hadn't paid off. It wasn't a gamble, Captain. Superman swung his legs off the bio bed, ignoring McCoy's protests. The Romulans thought they had me trapped between two bad choices. But there's always a third option if you're willing to pay the price yourself. I just had to show them I was willing. That's the problem, Kirk said. You can't keep paying that price. Eventually, even you will run out of resilience. And when that happens, people die because I wasn't willing to risk myself to save them. Superman met Kirk's eyes. Captain, I understand your concern. But this is who I am. It's what these powers mean. If I have the ability to save lives and I choose not to because it's dangerous or inconvenient or politically complicated, then what's the point of having the powers at all? The silence that followed was heavy with understanding and disagreement in equal measure. Finally, Spock spoke. A fascinating philosophical position. However, I must point out that your willingness to sacrifice yourself assumes you are expendable. Given that you may be the only member of your species in this universe, that assumption is logically questionable. Superman smiled slightly. On my Earth, people used to say the same thing. That I should preserve myself, be careful, avoid unnecessary risks. But I learned something important. The moment you start treating your own life as more valuable than others, you stop being a hero. You become something else. Something dangerous. Kirk understood. He'd walked that same philosophical line his entire career, balancing the needs of the many against the value of the individual. All right, Clark. I'm not going to order you to change who you are. But I am going to ask that while you're in this universe, you at least coordinate with us before diving into planetary cores or absorbing antimatter explosions. Deal. Deal. Superman extended his hand, and Kirk shook it. McCoy cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt this bonding moment, but Jim, Starfleet Command has been hailing us for the last 10 minutes. They've heard about our Kryptonian guest and the Romulan incident. Admiral Comac wants a full report, and he wants to speak with Superman personally. Kirk and Superman exchanged glances. Here we go, Kirk muttered. Welcome to Starfleet bureaucracy, Clark. It's the one enemy even you might not be able to defeat. The briefing room had become a makeshift courtroom, though no one dared call it that openly. Admiral Comac's stern face dominated the viewscreen, his expression carved from the same granite that formed Starfleet Command's foundations. Behind him, Kirk could see other admirals and officials, the kind of brass that only assembled when careers were at stake. Superman stood at parade rest beside Kirk, wearing a replacement uniform that Enterprise's fabricators had synthesized, still blue and red, still bearing his family's symbol, but now with the practical durability of Starfleet materials. His cape was gone, disintegrated in the antimatter blast, and somehow the absence made him look less alien. More human. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Captain Kirk. Admiral Comac's voice carried the weight of institutional authority. In the span of less than 12 hours, you've made first contact with an extradimensional being of unprecedented power, allowed him to engage in single combat with a Klingon warrior, sent him unsupervised to handle a planetary emergency, and watched him absorb an antimatter explosion that registered on sensors halfway across the sector. That's an accurate summary, Admiral, Kirk replied, his tone carefully neutral. And during this time, you learned that both the Klingon Empire and the Romulan Star Empire are aware of his existence and actively attempting to acquire, weaponize, or neutralize him. Also correct, sir. Comac leaned forward. Captain, do you have any idea what kind of political firestorm you've created? The Klingon High Council is demanding explanations. The Romulan Senate is filing formal protests through their diplomatic channels, such as they are. And every member of the Federation Council wants to know why we're harboring what amounts to a sentient weapons platform without proper authorization. Superman's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, a discipline Kirk appreciated. With respect, Admiral, Kirk said carefully, Kal-El is not a weapons platform. He's a refugee from another universe who was forcibly brought here by unknown parties using stolen technology. The Romulans admitted as much before they withdrew. A refugee with the ability to fly through space unassisted, survive antimatter explosions, and single-handedly defeat Klingon warriors. A new voice joined the conversation, Admiral Fitzpatrick, head of Starfleet Strategic Operations. Captain Kirk, I've reviewed your sensor logs. This being represents either the greatest strategic asset the Federation has ever possessed, or the greatest threat. We need to determine which. He's neither, Admiral. Kirk's voice hardened. He's a person. One who saved over 12,000 colonists on Ceti Alpha V while your nearest support vessels were still hours away. A person, Fitzpatrick repeated skeptically. Captain, persons don't absorb antimatter explosions. Persons don't fly at velocities our sensors struggle to track. We need to understand what we're dealing with here, and that means comprehensive analysis. Scientific study. Security protocols. Superman finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying an edge. Admiral Fitzpatrick, I understand your concern. In your position, I'd have questions too. But I'm not going to submit to being studied like a lab specimen or contained like a potential threat. I've cooperated fully with Dr. McCoy's medical scans. I've shared everything I know about how I came to be here. But I won't be imprisoned or treated as Federation property. No one's suggesting imprisonment, Comac interjected, though his tone suggested otherwise. However, given the attention your presence has attracted from hostile powers, Starfleet has a responsibility to ensure you don't become a catalyst for interstellar conflict. Then may I suggest, Spock said, stepping forward, that the most logical approach is to assist Kal-El in returning to his universe of origin. This would simultaneously remove the source of political tension and restore him to his proper reality. If that's even possible, another admiral added, Nogura, known for his pragmatic approach to impossible situations. Mr. Spock, do we have any idea how to replicate the dimensional breach that brought him here? We have recovered fragments of the Romulan resonance device, Spock replied. Analysis suggests it utilized a combination of Kryptonian crystal technology and Federation transporter principles, modified to breach dimensional barriers. With sufficient resources and time, it may be possible to reverse engineer a controlled return mechanism. Superman's attention sharpened. How much time? Unknown. The technology is unprecedented. Weeks at minimum. Possibly months. Kirk saw Superman's expression shift, hope tempered by resignation. Months trapped in an unfamiliar universe, with hostile powers seeking to capture or kill him, while everyone debated whether he was asset or threat. Admirals, Kirk said, making a command decision, I propose the Enterprise continue its current mission while providing Kal-El with temporary sanctuary. Mr. Spock can work on the dimensional breach problem. Superman can assist us with situations where his unique capabilities are genuinely needed, and we can demonstrate to the Federation Council that he's an ally, not a threat. Absolutely not, Fitzpatrick snapped. Captain, you're already operating outside protocol. Now you want to turn the Federation flagship into a taxi service for an interdimensional unknown. We need him contained, studied, and... Admiral. Superman's voice cut through the argument like a phaser through hull plating. Let me make something very clear. I'm not going to be contained. I'm not going to be studied against my will. And I'm certainly not going to be weaponized by Starfleet or anyone else. He stepped closer to the viewscreen, his blue eyes intense. I've spent my entire life using my abilities to protect people. That's not going to change just because I'm in a different universe. But I'm also not going to let fear and paranoia turn me into a prisoner. The admirals exchanged glances, the kind of look senior officers give when a situation is rapidly spiraling beyond their control. Admiral Nogura finally spoke, his voice measured. Kal-El, what exactly are you proposing? Freedom of movement. The ability to help where I'm needed without layers of authorization and oversight. In return, I'll work with Commander Spock to find a way home, and I'll coordinate with Captain Kirk on situations where my involvement might have political implications. Superman paused. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking to be treated like what I am, someone trying to do the right thing in a complicated situation. The right thing, Comac repeated. And who decides what that is? You. Captain Kirk. The Prime Directive exists for a reason, Mr. Kal-El. It prevents well-intentioned interference from causing more harm than good. I'm familiar with the concept, Admiral. On my Earth, we had similar debates. But I learned that sometimes the Prime Directive is an excuse not to act when action is necessary. Sometimes doing nothing is worse than doing something imperfect. Kirk winced internally. Superman had just challenged Starfleet's most sacred principle in front of its highest-ranking officers. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Admiral Nogura surprised everyone by laughing, a brief, sharp sound. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. And you're not wrong, the Prime Directive has been debated since its inception. He looked at his fellow admirals. Gentlemen, I propose a compromise. Kal-El remains aboard the Enterprise under Captain Kirk's supervision. Mr. Spock works on the dimensional breach problem with full Science Division support. And Superman, he emphasized the name Superman had been called during the crisis, agrees to consult with Starfleet Command before taking action that could trigger interstellar incidents. That's essentially what Captain Kirk already suggested, Fitzpatrick protested. Which is why it's a good plan, Noguera countered. Sometimes the simplest solution is the correct one. Captain Kirk has proven his judgment in first contact situations. If he believes Kal-El can be trusted, that carries weight. He looked directly at Superman through the screen. But understand this, one wrong move, one civilian casualty, one political disaster, and this arrangement ends. Immediately. Are we clear? Superman nodded. Crystal clear, Admiral. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're about to discover that navigating Federation politics is more challenging than fighting Klingon or Romulans. Noguera's expression softened slightly. But if you genuinely want to help, we can use someone with your capabilities. The galaxy isn't short on disasters that need someone willing to fly into the fire. The transmission ended, leaving the briefing room in relative silence. Kirk exhaled slowly, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. Well, McCoy said from his position by the door, that could have gone worse. They could have ordered us to throw him in the brig and throw away the key. They still might, Kirk replied. Clark, you just painted a target on both of us. If something goes wrong, then I'll take full responsibility, Superman said firmly. Captain, I won't let your career suffer because you helped me. My career can take care of itself. Kirk moved to the viewport, staring at the stars. But you need to understand something. This universe operates on rules, political rules, social rules, physical rules. You can't just Superman your way through every problem. Sometimes diplomacy matters more than power. I know that. Superman joined him at the viewport. On my Earth, I had to learn that lesson repeatedly. Every time I thought I could solve a problem by being strong enough, fast enough, I discovered the real solutions required patience, compromise, understanding. He paused. But I also learned that when lives are at stake, you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. Sometimes you have to act, even if the situation is messy. Kirk studied Superman's reflection in the transparent aluminum. You and I are going to clash, Clark. Our philosophies overlap, but they're not identical. I've bent the Prime Directive when I thought it was necessary, but I've also watched civilizations destroy themselves because someone interfered with good intentions. Then we'll argue, debate, push each other toward better decisions, Superman replied. I'd rather work with someone who challenges my assumptions than someone who just agrees with everything I do. Spock raised an eyebrow. A remarkably mature perspective for someone who has been in this universe less than a full day. I've had good teachers. Superman smiled slightly. My father, both of them, actually, taught me that power without wisdom is just another form of tyranny. Even if that wisdom comes from disagreement. The intercom chirped. Bridge to Captain Kirk. We're receiving a distress signal from the USS Constellation. They report their dilithium matrix is failing, and they're stranded in the Corvette system, in disputed space claimed by both the Federation and the Klingon Empire. Kirk was already moving toward the door. Mr. Sulu, plot a course to the Corvette system, maximum warp. How long until we're in range? 4 hours, Captain. The Constellation doesn't have 4 hours if their dilithium matrix is failing, Spock observed. Without power, their life support will fail within 2.3 hours. Superman looked at Kirk. I could be there in 30 minutes. And do what? Kirk asked. You can't repair a dilithium matrix. You don't have the technical knowledge or the equipment. No, but I could tow their ship out of disputed space, back toward Federation territory where rescue vessels can reach them safely. Superman's mind was already working through the logistics. How much does a Constitution-class starship weigh? Approximately 190,000 metric tons, Spock supplied. I can manage that. I've moved heavier objects in my universe. Kirk wanted to say no. Wanted to follow protocol, wait for proper support, not send their newest ally into another potentially dangerous situation. But lives were at stake, and Superman was right. He could reach the constellation before the Enterprise, before any other Federation vessel. All right, Kirk decided. But you're taking a communicator, and you're reporting in every 10 minutes. And Clark? He met Superman's eyes. If Klingon vessels are in the area, you do not engage them. You get the constellation to safety and you get out. Understood? Understood, Captain. And one more thing. Kirk's expression was serious. The crew of the constellation, they don't know you. They're going to be scared, confused, possibly hostile. How you handle first contact with them matters. They're going to report back to Starfleet, and their testimony will influence how the Federation perceives you. Superman nodded slowly. So this is my real test. Not fighting Klingon or Romulans, but convincing ordinary people I'm not a threat. Welcome to the hard part of being a hero, McCoy said dryly. Superman smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features from merely handsome to something more approachable. Doctor, I've been doing the hard part my whole life. At least this time, I have people watching my back. Scotty's voice crackled over the intercom, and this time we're giving ye a proper engineering kit. Just in case ye need to improvise. 10 minutes later, Superman stood in the transporter room. A small engineering kit magnetically attached to his belt, a Starfleet communicator secured to his chest where his cape clasp used to be. Mr. Scott, Superman said as he stepped onto the pad, one question. If I'm towing the constellation through space, will their hull integrity hold? Scotty grinned. Lad, Constitution-class vessels are built to withstand pressures that would crush planets. As long as you're careful with your grip and don't accelerate too fast, she'll hold together just fine. Good to know. Superman looked at Kirk, who'd come down to see him off. Captain, thank you for trusting me. Don't make me regret it, Kirk replied. But his tone was warm, almost paternal. And Clark? Bring them home safe. That's the plan. Scotty energized the transporter, and Superman dissolved into light. Seconds later, he materialized in open space, the Enterprise dwindling behind him as he oriented toward the Corvette system. He took a moment to appreciate the view. Stars without atmospheric distortion, nebulae painted across the cosmic canvas, the infinite depth of space stretching in all directions. Different constellations, different sky, but the same fundamental beauty. Then he accelerated, leaving a faint trail of disturbed subspace particles in his wake, racing toward a ship full of people who didn't know his name, didn't know his intentions, and would have every reason to fear what they couldn't understand. The hard part, as McCoy said. But also the most important part. Because any fool with power could break things. It took something more, something human, to build trust. The USS Constellation hung dead in space, her warp nacelles dark, emergency lights flickering weakly through her viewports. Superman approached slowly, his enhanced vision cataloging the damage, hull breaches sealed with emergency patches, scorch marks across the secondary hull suggesting recent weapons fire, and the telltale energy signature of a failing dilithium matrix radiating like a dying star. USS Constellation, this is Superman. I'm here to assist. Please respond. Static crackled through his communicator, then a voice, strained, suspicious, exhausted. Unknown entity, this is Captain Matt Decker of the USS Constellation. Identify yourself and state your intentions. If you're another Klingon trick. I'm not Klingon, Captain. I'm. Superman paused, realizing how absurd the truth would sound. I'm working with Captain Kirk of the Enterprise. They're 4 hours out, but your life support won't last that long. I'm here to tow you out of disputed space to where Federation rescue vessels can reach you safely. A long pause. Then, tow us. Son, this ship weighs nearly 200,000 metric tons. Nothing short of a tractor beam can. Captain Decker, I don't have time to explain the physics. Your dilithium matrix is failing, your life support is down to emergency reserves, and if I'm reading your sensor logs correctly, there's a Klingon patrol sweeping this sector. They'll be here in approximately 90 minutes. Superman moved closer to the constellation's engineering section. I need you to trust me. I promise I can do this. Another pause, then Decker's voice came back harder, more authoritative. All right, whoever you are. But if this is some kind of, wait. Are you the being that fought on that asteroid? The one the Klingon are calling the Void Walker? Superman blinked at the nickname. I'm not sure about Void Walker, but yes, I had an encounter with a Klingon warrior recently. Then you're either genuine help or the biggest threat we've ever faced. Decker's laugh was brittle. At this point, I'll take either. We've got 437 crew aboard, most injured, life support failing. If you can get us to safety, do it. Superman studied the constellation structure, identifying the strongest load-bearing points, the primary hull's reinforced frame, the engineering section's structural integrity field generators, the points where stress would distribute most evenly. He'd moved asteroids before, towed damaged spacecraft in Earth's orbit, but never attempted anything at this scale across interstellar distances. Captain, I'm going to position myself beneath your engineering section. When I start moving, you're going to feel acceleration. It'll be gradual, I'm not going to risk structural damage. Your inertial dampeners should handle most of it, but make sure your crew is secured. Understood. Constellation standing by 4, whatever this is. Superman descended below the ship's ventral surface, positioned his hands against the reinforced hull plating, and pushed. Nothing happened. He pushed harder, channeling solar energy through his cellular structure, converting absorbed radiation into kinetic force. The constellation groaned, metal protesting against unexpected stress, but began to move. Slowly at first, inches per second, then faster as Superman found the equilibrium point between thrust and structural tolerance. Captain Decker, how's your hull integrity? Holding. Barely. Whatever you're doing, it's straining our already compromised structural supports, but we're not breaking up. Decker's voice carried a mixture of awe and terror. I've been in Starfleet 32 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Superman adjusted his angle, orienting the constellation toward Federation space. The ship responded like a wounded animal, reluctant, fragile, but moving. He accelerated carefully, building velocity without exceeding the hull's tolerance limits. Enterprise, this is Superman. I've got the constellation and we're en route to rendezvous coordinates. Estimated arrival in 73 minutes. Kirk's voice crackled back, relief evident. Acknowledged, Superman. Medical teams are standing by. How's the constellation's crew? Shaken but alive. Captain Decker reports 437 personnel, most injured. They've been through hell. They're not out of it yet, Spock's voice cut in. Superman, I'm detecting 3 Klingon D-7 cruisers entering the Corvette system. They appear to be investigating the constellation's distress signal. Superman's enhanced hearing picked up the change in the constellation's bridge environment, alarms sounding, crew members shouting warnings. Contact. Decker reported. 3 Klingon vessels decloaking off our starboard bow. They're hailing us, no, wait. They're hailing you. A new voice filled the communications channel, deep, resonant, carrying both authority and something that might have been respect. Void Walker. I am Commander Koloth of the Imperial Klingon Vessel Divisor. We meet at last. Superman kept pushing the constellation toward safety, not slowing. Commander Koloth. I'm currently engaged in a rescue operation. Unless you're here to help, I suggest you maintain your distance. Help. Kolotha's laugh was sharp. No, Void Walker. We are here to witness. Word has spread throughout the empire of the being who defeated Lieutenant Kirk through strength and philosophy. The word was spoken with something between mockery and genuine interest. The High Council debates whether you are warrior, weapon, or something else entirely. I'm someone trying to save lives. That's all that matters right now. Is it? Kolotha's tone shifted. The constellation violated the neutral zone, engaged our patrol vessels in combat, and now flees behind your protection. By Klingon law. They are legitimate targets. Yet you shield them. Tell me, Void Walker, if we fire upon the constellation, will you stop us? Will you choose between your rescue mission and combat with the Empire? Superman felt the trap closing. The Klingon weren't trying to destroy the constellation, they were testing him. Testing his priorities, his limits, his willingness to fight when diplomacy failed. Captain Decker, Superman said quietly, what happened in the neutral zone? We were investigating a distress signal, Decker replied, his voice tight with anger and guilt. It was a trap. The Klingon ambushed us, disabled our engines. We fought back, killed maybe 30 of their crew, and managed to limp away before they could finish us off. 30 Klingon warriors dead. That changed the equation. This wasn't just about rescue anymore, it was about honor debt, about revenge, about the complex codes that govern Klingon culture. Commander Koloth, Superman said carefully, I understand that Klingon honor demands satisfaction for your losses. But these people are injured, dying. Their ship is barely functional. Is there honor in destroying those who cannot defend themselves? Honor? Kolotha's voice carried an edge. You speak to me of honor while protecting those who ambushed and killed Imperial warriors. The Constellation's crew knew the risks when they entered disputed space. They fought. They killed. Now they must accept the consequences. Superman's mind raced through options. He couldn't fight 3 Klingon cruisers while towing the Constellation, the ship would be destroyed in the crossfire. He couldn't abandon the Constellation to certain death. And he couldn't simply surrender to Klingon justice without knowing what that meant for the survivors. Then let me propose an alternative, Superman said, an idea crystallizing. Commander Koloth, you said the Empire debates what I am. Warrior or weapon or something else. Let me give you an answer worth reporting to the High Council. I am listening. The Constellation's crew fought in self-defense. They took Klingon lives, but only because they were ambushed in what they believed was neutral space. That's not dishonorable combat, that's survival. Superman adjusted his grip on the Constellation, preparing for what he knew had to come next. But if honor demands a price for those deaths, then I'll pay it. Let the Constellation go. In exchange, I'll submit to whatever test of combat the Empire requires. One ship full of injured people for one being who can actually defend himself. That's a fair trade. The communications channel fell silent. On the Enterprise, Kirk was already shouting orders. Belay that. Superman, you're not authorized to negotiate with the Klingon Empire. Stand down. But Superman wasn't standing down. He was doing what he'd always done, putting himself between danger and those who needed protection. Commander Koloth, do we have an agreement? Kolotha's laughter echoed across the channel, genuine, surprised, almost delighted. The Void Walker offers himself in exchange for Federation warriors who ambushed Klingon. This is either the greatest act of foolishness or the greatest act of courage I have witnessed in my career. His tone shifted to something more formal. Very well. I accept your terms. Release the Constellation. You will board my vessel and face judgment by Klingon law. If you survive, Koloth emphasized that if, then the Empire's honor debt is satisfied. Superman, no. Decker's voice cut in. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Klingon justice is a chance for your crew to survive, Superman finished. Captain Decker, get your people home. Tell Captain Kirk. He paused, knowing Kirk would be furious. Tell him I'm sorry for the diplomatic headache, but I made a choice. He released the Constellation, giving it one final push toward Federation space with enough velocity to carry it to safety. The ship drifted away, and Superman hung alone between 3 Klingon warships, their weapons trained on him like a firing squad. I'm ready, Commander Koloth. A transporter beam claimed him, and Superman materialized on the bridge of the divisor. The Klingon command center was darker than the Enterprise, lit by crimson displays and functional illumination that emphasized brutal efficiency over comfort. The crew, warriors all, stared at him with expressions ranging from hostility to fascination. Commander Koloth stood from his command chair, a tall Klingon whose bearing spoke to decades of command experience. His eyes studied Superman with the intensity of a predator evaluating unexpected prey. So, Koloth said, circling Superman slowly, the Void Walker submits to Klingon justice. You understand what this means? I understand you're going to test whether I deserve the title your people gave me. More than that. Koloth stopped directly in front of Superman. You will face the Cortova, the trial of truth. 3 tests, strength, cunning, and honor. Pass all 3, and you walk free with the Empire's respect. Fail even one. He smiled, showing sharp teeth. Well. The Empire has use for powerful beings, even those who fail our trials. Superman met Kolotha's gaze without flinching. Then let's begin. On the Enterprise, Kirk slammed his fist on his command chair's armrest. Damn it. Spock, can we get a lock on him? Negative, Captain. The Klingon vessels have raised shields and are jamming our transporters. If we attempt a rescue, we start a war. Kirk's jaw clenched. And Superman just walked into Klingon custody to prevent exactly that. McCoy looked at Kirk with something between admiration and exasperation. Jim, that boy's either the bravest fool I've ever met, or the biggest problem we're ever going to face. I honestly can't tell which. Kirk watched the Klingon vessels on the view screen, his command instincts screaming at him to do something, anything, to retrieve their ally. But his diplomatic training, and his understanding of Superman's choice, held him back. Maybe, Kirk said quietly, he's both. And maybe that's exactly what this universe needs. The Cortova lasted 3 days. Superman faced challenges that would have killed any ordinary being, tests of physical endurance against Klingon combat specialists, puzzles designed to break even the most cunning minds, and moral dilemmas where honor and survival stood in opposition. He fought, he reasoned, and when the Empire demanded he choose between victory through deception or defeat through honesty, he chose truth. Commander Koloth watched every moment, his respect growing with each test Superman passed, not through overwhelming power, but through the careful application of strength tempered by restraint. When the final trial concluded, Superman standing bloodied but unbroken in the divisor's combat arena, Koloth approached with something the Empire rarely offered outsiders. You have proven yourself, Void Walker, Koloth declared before his assembled crew. Not as a weapon to be wielded, but as a warrior who understands that true strength lies in knowing when to show mercy. The Empire's honor debt is satisfied. You are free to return to your Federation. The Klingon High Council would debate Superman's status for years afterward. Some called him a strategic threat. Others named him a warrior worthy of respect. But all agreed on one thing: the being who could fly through stars and survive antimatter explosions had chosen to submit to their justice rather than let innocence die. That single choice did more for Federation-Klingon relations than a decade of diplomatic negotiations. The Enterprise retrieved Superman at the edge of the neutral zone. Kirk met him in the transporter room, his expression a mixture of relief, anger, and grudging admiration. That was the most reckless, unauthorized, diplomatically insane stunt I've ever witnessed, Kirk said. Then he extended his hand. It was also one of the bravest things I've seen in my career. Don't ever do it again. Superman shook his hand, managing a tired smile. I'll try, Captain. No promises. In the weeks that followed, Superman became an unofficial member of the Enterprise crew. Spock worked tirelessly on the dimensional breach problem, making slow but steady progress. McCoy continued his medical studies, gradually piecing together the mysteries of Kryptonian physiology. Scotty taught Superman about warp theory and transporter technology, fascinated by how someone could exist outside conventional physics. And Kirk taught Superman about command. About the impossible choices that came with power, about the weight of decisions that affected not just individuals but entire civilizations. They argued frequently, their philosophical differences creating friction that sparked insights neither could have achieved alone. The Romulans maintained their distance, but Starfleet intelligence reported increased Tal Shir activity focused on dimensional breach technology. The Federation Council officially granted Superman provisional status as a refugee under Starfleet protection, a bureaucratic designation that satisfied no one but prevented anyone from forcing the issue. 3 months after his arrival, Spock made a breakthrough. The resonance frequency needed to open a controlled dimensional bridge. It would require precise timing, enormous energy, and Superman's willing participation. There was no guarantee it would work. No certainty he'd arrive in his own universe rather than some other reality. But it was a chance to go home. Superman stood in the transporter room, surrounded by the Enterprise crew who'd become something like friends. Kirk offered final advice. McCoy insisted on one last medical scan, for the record. Scotty made him promise to be careful with whatever strange technology awaited on the other side. Spock raised his hand in the Vulcan salute. "Live long and prosper, Kal-El. Your time in our universe has been illuminating." Superman returned the gesture. "Peace and long life, Mr. Spock. All of you." He looked at each of them in turn. "Thank you for teaching me that even in a universe bound by rules and regulations, there's still room for hope. Still room for heroes. The galaxy could use more like you," Kirk said quietly. Both of them. The dimensional bridge opened, a shimmering cascade of energy that tore through reality itself. Superman stepped toward it, then paused at the threshold. "Captain Kirk. When you explore strange new worlds, when you seek out new life and new civilizations, remember that sometimes the most important discovery isn't what's out there. It's what's in here." He tapped his chest, over his heart. "The choice to be better than our power allows. To be more than just what we can do." Kirk nodded, understanding completely. "Boldly go, Clark. Wherever that takes you." Superman smiled one final time, then stepped into the light. The energy cascade collapsed, sealing the dimensional breach behind him. Sensors detected no trace of his passage. The transporter room fell silent. "Well," McCoy said finally, "I don't suppose we'll ever know if he made it home." "He made it," Kirk said with certainty he couldn't quite explain. "Men like that always find their way." The Enterprise turned back toward the stars, resuming its 5-year mission of exploration. The galaxy continued its eternal dance of politics, conflict, and cooperation. And somewhere in the vast multiverse, a man who could fly faster than starships learned to appreciate that strength and wisdom were gifts best shared across infinite realities. In the captain's log, Kirk made his final entry about the incident. "We encountered something unprecedented, a being of impossible power trapped in circumstances beyond his control. We could have treated him as a weapon, a threat, or a prisoner. Instead, we treated him as what he was, a person trying to do good in a complicated universe. Perhaps that's the lesson of first contact, not what we discover about others, but what we remember about ourselves. The capacity for compassion. The willingness to trust. The understanding that true strength lies not in power itself, but in how we choose to use it. If humanity ever faces such beings again, I hope we remember the man who could have conquered galaxies but chose instead to save a single ship full of people he'd never met. That's not just heroism. That's civilization. And far away, in a universe where yellow suns empowered Kryptonian cells and Earth spun beneath familiar stars, Superman emerged from the dimensional breach above his fortress of solitude. He was home. Changed, perhaps, by lessons learned among the stars, but home. He looked up at his son, and smiled. Then he flew toward Metropolis, where undoubtedly some disaster awaited, some crisis that required his intervention. Because that's what heroes did, in every universe, across all dimensions. They showed up when needed. And they never stopped trying to be worthy of the powers they'd been given. Live long and prosper. More stories await.